Here's a first look at the big changes coming to iPadOS 26. From significantly improved window management, the Files app has gotten way more powerful, a brand new preview app, better controls for audio input, the Journal app finally came to iPad, and more. And keep in mind, this is developer beta 2. It's not yet available to the public. That should be coming this July, and the full release this fall. First up, let's talk about window management, one of the biggest changes in the new version of iPadOS. Liquid glass design and all of that, I'll get into when I talk about iOS 26, so get subscribed, that'll be coming soon. First of all, if you want to use your iPad like normal, which is just full screen apps all the time, you can do that. But you can enable the new window management features by swiping down into Control Center and then enabling this toggle right here. Now, not only do you have the new windowed apps, but you still have access to Stage Manager, which can let you group apps and they'll be off to the side. I'll show you that in a moment. Once you have windowing enabled and you open an app, it'll start off full screen, but you'll see this little drag bar in the corner. Now you can actually do it from any corner, but when you start dragging in from the side, now you can resize that window and you have free form to make it whatever size or shape you would like. And you can do that from any corner, here in the bottom left, the top right, or the top left. Then you can move the window around by dragging up at the top, and you can place it however. If you want that slide over thin app look like you could have before, you can resize a window and place it off to the side, but there is no more slide over. That's gone from iPadOS 26. Now, once you've sized a window like this and you want to close or minimize it, you actually get the stoplight buttons just like on macOS. Let's say I minimize this, which as far as I can tell, just doesn't force quit the app. If I go to reopen it, it will actually reopen in the size I already had. Then I can open up another app. Let's go with shortcuts. When I tap it, it'll go back to the size I already had, and then I can resize it how I'd like. You can have way more windows open in iPadOS 26 than you could in previous versions with Stage Manager. You can also open multiple windows of the same app. For instance, if I open the Files app, I can have that file window open, and then if I wanted to open a second Files window, I can just tap and drag it up, and now I have two Finder windows open. This is going to make dragging and dropping from Files windows on iPad much easier. Now, if you wanted to enable Stage Manager in addition to the new windowing system, you can go back to Control Center, tap and hold on that option, and then enable Stage Manager. Then you can swipe in from the left edge and you'll have your different stages. Then you can go to one of those other stages by tapping that group of apps, and that stage you had set up will be in the left-hand sidebar. I can resize the settings window, and then you'll see the Stage Manager is right here, where I can go back to that previous arrangement of windows. Now, if you have multiple windows open of the same app, you can tap that app here in the dock, and then you'll get a view of all those windows. You can also tap and hold on that icon, and you can also see all the open windows here in the contextual menu. We're going to get to the Files app and the power of these contextual menus going forward, but this windowing feature has become way more powerful. Now, if I tap on my desktop or wallpaper, the windows will fly off to the side, I'll see my home screen, and now I can open another app, let's say like the Reader app. Then if I resize this, you'll see all the windows I had open previously are behind there. I can swipe up to go home, and you see all the apps will once again go off to the side. And if I want to dismiss them entirely, I can just swipe up again, and now they're gone. Now if I open another app, like let's say Preview, I once again go to a full screen app, I can resize it, but those other windows are not open anymore. But I can get them back if I want to swipe up like I'm going home, hold for a second, and then open the task switcher. You'll see all those windows that were open previously are still there, and I can open them again. I can tap and hold on an app, bring back one of the windows I have open, and there's even more hidden gestures to help you tile these windows. If I pinch in with 5 fingers, I get an app expose type view where I can see all my windows at a glance. I can also tile the windows multiple ways. If I tap and hold on the stoplight, you'll see different tiling options like going half to the right, half to the left, and there are also hidden flick gestures. So if I tap on a window and start moving it around the iPad, if I just flick it to the left, it'll automatically go into that 50% split view. Then I can take another app like Bear, flick it into either side, and then that will go into the 50% view. You can also tap and hold and do something like the 4 up, and it will tile it in quarters. Now, if you wanted to get to Spotlight, when you have your apps up like this, there's not really a way to drag from the middle of the screen, and if you do it from the top, you just get the lock screen or notifications. So you do have to reveal your home screen first, swipe down, then you can search for an app. We'll just use Podcast as an example. Then I can open that, resize it, and now I have that open with the other windows. I'll tap and hold on the stoplights, tile it in quarters, and you can do all of this on an external display as well. One setting I want to point out, which I just opened the Settings app and it's kind of distracting here, so I'm actually going to take it and flick it up to the top, and that actually enters full screen mode for an app. Then if you go down to multitasking and gestures, you'll see here you can do windowed apps and or stage manager. Just go back to full screen apps. And if you don't like that double swipe to go home to close your apps, you can toggle this on. And now if you have multiple windows open and I just swipe up to go home once, all the apps will close automatically. They won't just go off to the side. All right, windowing is huge, but number two, another cool feature is the new lock screen. Now this is just a standard wallpaper, but if I go over to one of my other pictures, not only can you resize the clock, which is pretty cool, you can actually create something called a spatial scene. So this was a picture I took on my iPhone, and when I ask it to make it a spatial scene, you see it has this pretty cool 3D effect. And again, I didn't take a spatial photo, this was just a raw image I took on my iPhone. Not only that, but if you have a photo with subjects, then you can create a spatial scene and the clock will actually go behind whatever subjects you have in your photo. I actually really love this parallax effect, using your own photos, having that clock layered behind it. And as you move the iPad, you can really see that 3D effect. It's going to be super fun to make a lot of spatial photos and wallpapers from your library. And of course, you have the same customization tools for your lock screen. If you want it to be a live image, you can do that. You can add your lock screen widgets here on the left. And of course, you can adjust that clock size however you'd like. Now, it won't have that layered effect if you make it too big or the picture you're working with doesn't work. Also, it seems like you have to choose between live photo and spatial scene. So I'm gonna go back to spatial scene, resize that clock so it layers behind the subject, and I'll save that. Also, you can see here in Developer Beta 2 that Apple has made sure to blur whatever is behind Control Center to make sure it's legible. Now, if you're curious about the case I've been using this whole video, this is Mof's Dynamic Folio, and they actually sponsored this video. I've been using this case full time with my iPad ever since I got it, and I absolutely love how thin and light it is, but even more so, how you can position it in lots of different ways. I love this stand here, especially if I'm watching something on my iPad. Really elevates the iPad at a good viewing distance, but then I can also turn it around, bend the iPad down, and now this is a perfect canvas to work off of. Now, if you follow my podcast, Primary Technology, you know I edit the audio version here in Ferrite on iPad, and the Mof Dynamic Folio angles my iPad perfectly so I can edit the podcast with Apple Pencil. You can also get the quick release Apple Pencil holder. It magnetically attaches here to the Folio. Attach your Apple Pencil for charging, close it up, and you're ready to go with your Apple Pencil secured. You can even put the Dynamic Folio in a vertical orientation. So if you're wanting to read an article or a book, you can do that too. One of my other favorite orientations is when you match up the icons. So if you ever forget how to fold it, you just match those up, place it down on the desk like this. And again, this is a great ergonomic way to use your Apple Pencil for drawing on the iPad. But now you have a perfect place to put your iPhone, and now you can have a dual screen workspace with the Dynamic Folio. And now you can use features like Universal Clipboard between your iPhone and your iPad, and it's super fast and intuitive to use. Copy it on iPhone, paste it on iPad. Also, one of the things I do all the time is drag images from my Mac to my iPad with Universal Control. And having the iPad propped up here on my desk, I'll just drag an image, drag it all the way into Ferrite for chapter artwork. I can drop it here, and I'm good to go. So whether you want to prop up your iPad to watch something, do some work like editing a podcast or drawing, the Mof Dynamic Folio is the way to go. Plus, super thin and light and easy to throw into a bag. You can get the Mof Dynamic Folio at the link down in the video description, and my thanks to Mof for sponsoring this video. Next, let's talk about the huge changes to the Files app. You can see it reopened in the size I had, but I'm just gonna drag it around, flick it to the top, and now it's full screen. First, you can now customize your folder icons and colors. Just tap and hold on a folder, and you'll see a huge contextual menu, which we'll get into in a second, but you'll see here at the bottom, customize folder and tags, and here you can choose an icon. Tags will relate to the colored folder, and you can even go to your emoji keyboard, and let's find that microphone emoji. And now my podcast folder is color-coded with a microphone icon. Now you'll also notice there's now a new list view. So you can tap this view option here, and you have icons, list, or even columns. You can also have the sorting options here, or go to view options, and there you have your sorting and grouping options. Personally, I use columns on my Mac, and I love having it here on the iPad now too. Now, once you get to actual files, I'll tap and hold here on an MP3 file. Lots of options here like copying, moving, removing, or keeping downloaded. You also have Quick Look, but one of the new features, and it's really useful, is the Open With option. Now you can choose to open this file with something like Transcriptionist, which maybe I want to transcribe an MP3 file here on my iPad. Well, I can choose to open that file directly in that app. You can also open the Get Info menu, and here actually set a default app. so any MP3 will open in your app of choice. You can also compress, duplicate, and even create a new folder with an item. And what's really powerful is if you had a bunch of items, remember, you can select with a 2-finger drag across multiple items. Now I can tap and hold with multiple items selected, create a new folder with those items, add a tag to those items, compress it, duplicate, or open with. Now with the new Files app on iPad, you do get the ability to rename a single file right there, but the one thing that didn't carry over from the Mac is mass renaming. So you can't select multiple files and then actually rename them all or format the name. That's still a Mac-only feature. Now up here, you have the ability to select multiple items manually if you want to do that. Again, I do the 2-finger swipe. You have the new folder option here, search, and of course you can add your favorite folders to the left sidebar. You can even tap and hold on empty space and do things like add a new folder, paste, or scan a document, and it'll go right here to this folder. Next, iPad got a brand new app, and this app is also coming to the iPhone as well, but we now have a standalone preview app. Preview on the Mac is super powerful, and some of those features are now here on the iPad. I'll open a PDF like this manual I had. I can pinch to zoom out, open the sidebar here on the left, and I see all the pages of the document. I can search the PDF with the magnifying glass here. And if I tap the 3 dots, I have things like rotate controls, rotate left, rotate right, and I can even jump to a specific page number. You can also share the PDF here, even run a shortcut, more on shortcuts in a second. And you also have selection options here, the rotate tool, and if it's a PDF, like a form that you need to fill out, you have the autofill option here. Now you get markup tools as well, which we had before when you just opened a PDF, but a nice addition here, if you tap the plus icon, you can add a sticker, text, signature, but thankfully the loop option is here in preview. So you can add a loop, move it around, make it larger to zoom in on a specific part of the PDF, then you can duplicate that loop, trash it, or even copy, duplicate, and so forth. Thankful for that loop feature so you can focus on specific parts of a PDF. Another new feature of iPadOS 2016 is the menu bar. When you swipe from the top edge, you now get a menu bar specific to the active app. And here you have tons of options. You can jump into the settings for that specific app. Great way to jump to that pane in the settings. And just like on the Mac, you have the whole file, edit, view, and more. Lots of tools here. And remember, every app can have different options in the menu bar. You can even do things like customize the toolbar of an app like here in preview and put whatever controls are most meaningful to you here for quick access. Like running dark mode, now I can tap that. And you also have your tools, window, and more. You also get it in apps like shortcuts. Swipe down from the top, you can go to shortcut settings. You'll see all the options for file, jump into a specific shortcut. I'll talk more about these in a second. You can run the shortcut. You have your different view options. Under the edit menu, you have a bunch of options here like control flow, add comments, set variable, and more. You also see the keyboard shortcuts next to all these menu options. I love all of this. And as the summer progresses, I'm sure we'll see lots of third-party apps add those menu bars as well. Now, number 6 is huge, something I've been asking for a long time. Audio input control. Now, if you want to record content from your iPad or a podcast, using things like USB microphones is way more useful. I'm going to open an app here to record a podcast, like Riverside. Riverside is where I record every episode of Primary Technology. That's my tech podcast with Jason Aten. You can subscribe above and links down in the description. But if we were to jump in to start recording, now I'll plug in my USB microphone, and when you attach a device like that, you can swipe to go to Control Center and then tap the active app up here. It'll bring up this menu, and here you'll see the new input control. When I tap input, I'll see a list of devices connected to the iPad, and sure enough, there's the Shure MV7 Plus, and now I can hard choose that as the input for this app. You also get access to things like voice isolation that will apply to whatever audio device you have connected. So I can turn on voice isolation, and now this microphone with voice isolation will be used in Riverside once I'm ready to record. Then I can go to another app like Ferrite, where I edit the audio version of my podcast, swipe to Control Center, tap here in the app, and you'll see the input control is again available right here. Now, USB microphones, they seem to be working pretty consistently, and even if you attach an audio interface like the Vocaster 2, you'll actually see that appear in this audio input menu as well. Really powerful stuff, going to be great for those who podcast and make content from iPad. Number 7, another welcome addition, the Journal app has come to iPad and the Mac. Opened in the same size window I had before, but I'll flick up to the top, and the Journal app has come with more features. For instance, you can actually have multiple journals. If you want to have one for work, personal, or other topics, you can have multiple journals here. There's a new map view, which is pretty sweet. You can even see where the entries were made, like, oh, here's my journal entry of WWDC. And then you can get a preview of all the entries in that location here in the map view. Also, a big feature here, you can now export your journal entries to back them up. You couldn't export them previously. And when you create a new journal entry, you now have Apple Pencil input. So if you want to write and type plus add photos to a journal entry, you can now do all of that. And just like other apps, Journal app also has the menu bar option, quick access to export, print, new journal. Once you're in an entry, lots of options here in the menu bar, and you can also include mindfulness minutes here in Journal. All right, number 8 are extremely powerful shortcuts. Now I've created a few as an example, specifically for Apple Intelligence. I did an entire video on the new shortcuts actions in iOS 26. You can check out that video above and down in the description. But one of the most powerful new actions available, and this is across all the platforms. Remember, you need Apple Intelligence enabled and to be on one of the developer betas right now. But this action right here allows you to choose between Apple's cloud or private cloud compute AI model, its on-device LLM, or you can even use the ChatGPT extension. But this works way more consistently than using the ChatGPT app and then the ChatGPT action in a shortcut. I've been using a bunch of these recently, and I can say this is way more reliable. And so this is actually a shortcut that I created that helps you compare what each model will give you as an output. Then it'll show each model's output in Quick Look, and you can see which model might work for a specific task. Now, one of the use cases for ChatGPT on my Mac is helping me with YouTube title and description ideas. So I have a prompt here, and basically I feed it a transcription of one of my videos, and then it's going to run the model test, and then I can compare those results. So I'm actually going to go to my Files app to one of the transcriptions I have saved here, and that shortcut actually shows up in the Share menu. So I'll go to Share, then go to More, then you'll see the YouTube Details shortcut I have here. I'm going to run this shortcut, which takes the content of that text file, namely the transcript of my video, and then it's going to cycle through all 3 models, the on-device, private cloud compute, and ChatGPT. And you can see how quickly these models work because I already have the output for all 3. Here's private cloud compute, here's the on-device LLM, and then here's the ChatGPT extension. Now I will say ChatGPT follows my instructions a little more closely, like keeping tags under 500 characters, helping me see what videos I tag there at the end, but then you can run that model test as a run shortcut action in any other shortcuts you make. Now one other shortcut, and I'll link these down in the video description. Again, keep in mind you need to be on the beta and with Apple Intelligence, but this is a circle to search shortcut. So you can take a photo, circle something in markup, and then it's going to ask Apple's Apple Intelligence model what is circled, and then it'll give you an option. Links to these shortcuts are down in the description, and get subscribed because more Apple Intelligence shortcuts with iOS 26 coming very soon. All right, number 9, Apple has enabled high-quality local recording when you're using video conference or calling apps. Now, it took me a minute to figure out how to do local capture here on the iPad, but it does work in FaceTime right now. So if you start a FaceTime call with someone, now there's no local capture here in the 3-dot menu. You have to go to Control Center to activate it. And if you already have a full Control Center, it might be confusing because it's not there. But if you go into edit mode and add a control, you can search for local capture. You'll see it here under utilities, and then you can add that control. That's it right here. And when I tap local capture, now we get this little preview with a countdown clock, and it's starting to record. Now there was no go button after I tapped the Control Center action. It just starts right away. And remember, this does not activate recording on the other person's device. The other person I'm calling, which is here on this iPhone, if the person doesn't have that local capture Control Center action already added, I would have to walk them through adding that. So here we have local capture here. I'll add that now to Control Center. Now I tap it over here, but the tracks are not going to be perfectly in sync. They're going to be different lengths because mine started right away and theirs started when they could do it. Now, once we stop recording, you'll see I can stop it here on my iPad, but it's going to continue recording on the other person's device. Now, if you hang up the call, I imagine it also stops, but let's see what happens. I'll hang up the call here, and now we get a notification that that local capture was also here on the iPhone. Here in my iPad, if I look at my notifications, you'll see that local capture file notification right here. Then I can jump in, and here's the raw video and audio from the FaceTime call. Again, this is just my end, and remember the tracks are going to be different lengths, and then you and your other guest will have to figure out how to share those files with each other, maybe through a shared iCloud Drive folder or uploading it to a cloud service. And finally, number 10, and this is a big deal, but task completion, whether you're exporting a video from Final Cut or doing something like backing up your journal entries, you can now have that background task going and you don't have to stay in the app. For instance, I'll export my journal entries right here for a backup. We'll say keep both. And now you actually get that live activity of that export happening in the background, and you can keep working on your iPad, doing whatever you'd like, and the task will continue. That will also apply to Final Cut exports, and you actually see that symbol here up by the control center, and you can bring it back. And that will also include downloads of large files as well. That's 10 of the biggest new features in iPadOS 26, and even more like live translation, more customization for your home screen, and other features are available in iOS 26 and macOS Tahoe. I actually did an early preview of macOS Tahoe. You could check that video out up here. And again, get subscribed because as the betas come out and public betas are available, I'm going to share my top features across all the platforms. And if you want to see that shortcuts video where I use Apple Intelligence, check out this video right up here. If you have any questions, leave comments below this video. Don't forget to hit that like button. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.